one more minute and then I'll start the presentation. Hopefully it will work this time. Yep. Very awkward. But you can join on a video. We've done that before in the morning session. We had some of the audience joining in with a video and asking questions, and it was quite a lot of fun. So feel welcome to jump in on the video, probably at the end, if you have any questions. They might be similar to other people's watching, so no problem with that. It would be nice to see some faces, honestly. All right, so I'll start sharing my screen and hopefully it will work. Okay, perfect. Okay, so I will start this presentation. So the anime might be a little bit different from the one I did before, so hopefully you'll still enjoy it. So, well, good evening or good morning or hello for all of you that are joining. I understand you all from different parts of the world. My name is Joana. I'm actually based in Portugal at the moment, although I'm a marine biologist working for the Olive Ridley Project, and I manage the project in Kenya. So today I'll be talking a little bit about sea turtle biology, the threats that they're facing in the Indian Ocean, and what the Olive Ridley Project as a charity is doing to tackle some of those threats. And also some ways where you can get involved and help to mitigate those threats as well and become an integrated part of conservation and research in the Indian Ocean and abroad. So sea turtles are really, really amazing animals. I hope that those of you watching have had the opportunity to be underwater with them or seeing them nesting on the beach. They're really, really cool animals. I mean, they've been around for the last 120 million years, which is really cool. They actually coexisted with the dinosaurs, and they're reptiles, of course. So as reptiles, like any other reptile, their body is covered with scales. What really differentiates them from the other reptiles, of course, is the beautiful carapace. Also, surprisingly enough, some people don't know this, but they have lungs. They breathe through lungs, just like us, which of course has consequences. They need to come to the surface of the water to breathe. Although, of course, they adapted to spend more time in the water than we do. And they're also cold-blooded. That means that they don't stay warm the whole time like we do. That means that their body temperature will fluctuate with that of the water around it. So that means that they tend to stick around to temperate and tropical waters where the water is agreeable with them. If they're exposed to cold waters, except for the leatherback, when we see that a little bit ahead, they can actually die. They become cold stunned and they cannot function in extreme cold water temperatures. They retain their connection to land. They actually originate from terrestrial ancestors. So they return to land to lay the eggs. And usually the nesting beaches are located in tropical and temperate beaches around the world. In the Indian Ocean, So these are some of the interesting facts about sea turtles, but for me, what is more interesting and what makes them special is about their life cycle. It is extremely complex. Of course, it has a land stage and then about 90, and that corresponds only to about 1% of their life cycle. Most of the time they spend in the water. But as I mentioned, their life starts on land. So it starts with the migration of the male and the female turtles that travel thousands of kilometers from their nesting areas to the beaches where they were born. Okay. Usually the males do not come on land, only the females. When the females are ready to lay eggs, they will dig, they usually come at night, they will dig a nest with the back flippers. They will lay anything between 50 to 200 eggs, and that depends on the species. Typically, the eggs remain incubating under the sand for about 60 days, give it or take. It depends on a lot of things like temperature, humidity, and so on. And once the babies hatch, they go straight into the water. And because they're so small, we're looking at very small animals that are just a little bit larger than 5-10 centimeters, a maximum. They're not strong enough to swim anyway. So they will remain in the ocean currents, passively floating in this flotsam and sargassum areas, feeding and growing until they're large enough to actually leave those areas and settle somewhere. So for species like the hawksbill and the greens that they depend on coastal habitats, when they're about 30 to 40 centimeters of size, they will, upon reaching a coral reef or a seagrass bed, they will leave these currents, establish there, and remain there for several years. Other species like the Olive Ridley, the loggerhead, and the leatherback, they actually feed in the open ocean, and it's rarely that we see them in the coastal areas. Now, green turtles, they can take up to 50 years to reach sexual maturity. Just to give an example. So, of course, the sea turtles, they take a long time to reach sexual maturity. The shortest one is the leatherback. It takes about 12 to 15 years, believe it or not. But then as the size of the turtle, take a little bit longer to reach sexual maturity. So once they are sexual mature, the reproductive cycle occurs every 2 to 3 years. And then, as I mentioned, it starts from the migration from the feeding areas to the beaches where they will reproduce. Now, even better than that is that the beaches where they return, actually the beaches where they were born. Okay, this is called natal homing. So sea turtles are extremely fascinating because they will come back to the beach where they were born, whether it's like 15 to 50 years later after they were born. So that is really cool. So in the Indian Ocean, we find 5 species of sea turtles. Probably the two species that divers are more familiar with are the green turtle and the hawksbill, because they're the ones that we see feeding and living in the coastal habitats. And then we have the Olive Ridley, the loggerhead turtle, and the leatherback turtle. So I'll go a little bit over each of these species. So, hopefully the video will work now. So the green turtle, of course, I think most of us are familiar with this species. Here we see a juvenile floating over a reef in the Maldives. But the sea turtle is actually the largest of all of them. As adults, they can reach up to 1.2 meters or 1.5 meters and weigh up to 150 kilos. Despite being the largest turtles, this species is mainly vegetarian. So it will feed mostly on seagrasses and algae and so on. So those are the ones that we usually see if we're snorkeling over seagrass beds and so on. This sea turtle nests throughout the region, of course, and is considered an endangered species. Then we have the hawksbill. So the hawksbill is another of the familiar species. Sorry, a little bit hiccup here. The video should be playing. Okay, hopefully it'll work. So the hawksbill is a very special species, in my opinion. It's very different from all the other species. As you see here, the hawksbill is feeding on sponges or corals. So the beak is actually shaped as in a hawk, okay, which is perfectly adapted for ripping apart coral bits and sponges from rock crevices and coral reefs, for instance. It is a very different turtle as well, because if you compare the shell with other species, the scutes on the carapace on all the species are placed next to each other, but in the hawksbills they're actually overlapping like the tiles of the roof, and also the back of the shell is serrated. So that's a unique feature for the species. As I mentioned, it's very common to see them on the coral reefs. They're specialized on sponges in particular, and throughout their range, they are critically endangered. Then we have the Olive Ridley. So this is the species that gives name to our organization. This species is exclusively oceanic, so we will not usually see them on our dives. It is the most common species throughout the world, okay? And for this reason is considered vulnerable by the IUCN. It's an omnivorous species. It will feed on a variety of things, usually found in the water column, whether it's like small crustaceans, fish, mollusks, and so on. In the Indian Ocean, we have large populations nesting, for instance, in India and Pakistan, and actually is the only species that nests in what we call diaribadas, which are the mass nesting events, where you see thousands of them nesting in a synchronized way on a single night, on a single beach. It's really cool. Then the loggerhead. So the loggerhead, again, we might see it or not in our dives. Okay, it's usually associated with estuaries and rocky reefs. It feeds mostly on crustaceans and mollusks, but the hard ones. So if you look at the video, you will see that that the head is massive, okay? So it's very different from all the other species. This head is built of strength. The jaws are the strongest ones we have for all the sea turtle species. This turtle uses the strong jaws to crush like conch shells, lobsters, and so on. In the Indian Ocean, we have the largest nesting population in the world, which is located in Oman. And throughout this range is considered, depending on the oceans, from vulnerable to endangered. And finally, we have the leatherback turtle. So the leatherback turtle is definitely oceanic. You will not see it unless you're very, very lucky. But it's usually associated with cold water fronts, which sometimes we see it closer to shore when there's like a jellyfish outbreak, because the species feeds on jellyfish. It is the largest of the sea turtle species. It can reach up to 2 meters length, although it's uncommon. We're looking more at 150, 180. It can weigh up to 1 ton, okay? And of course, as you see from the picture, it is very different from all the other sea turtle species. It lacks a hard shell. So actually its shell is not made of bones, but of skin. Okay, you can see it has 7 longitudinal ridges. It is black in color, and it's full of white spots. If you touch the carapace of this turtle, it will feel like you're touching leather, hence the name. In the Indian Ocean is fairly common, but it will be more common in the Atlantic, for instance, and in the Pacific Ocean, where it's quite abundant. Depending on the location where you find it, it can be critically endangered or vulnerable. The populations fluctuate a lot. Then there are 2 other species in the world as well. I'm not going to speak too much about them. One is the flatback turtle. This species is endemic to Australia, so there's no way you will find it in the Indian Ocean or anywhere in the world. And it's a sister species to the Olive Ridley. Is also one of the smallest animals. Like the Olive Ridley, maximum size would be about 70 centimeters tops and about 50 kilos of weight, for instance. But again, is restricted to the Australian waters. And then you have the Kemp's Ridley. I apologize for the picture. It's similar to this. This is not a Kemp's Ridley. But the Kemp's Ridley is endemic to the Gulf of Mexico, and it nests there exclusively. Sometimes, if you're from the European region, we see a lot of these turtles stranded in European coasts. They come with the currents, unfortunately, and they do not resist to the cold water. But otherwise, unless you live in the Atlantic and you work in the Atlantic, you will not see the species. So moving on, let's talk a little bit about threats. So of course, all the sea turtles are threatened by a variety of issues. It all starts as soon as the turtle leaves the nest. The hatchlings are vulnerable to predation, of course. So predators will be the single most important threat for the nests and for the hatchlings. So we're talking about a huge predation of eggs and hatchlings by crabs, by seabirds once they come out of the nest. In some cases, there's also predation of nests and hatchlings by dogs, raccoons, cats, and so on. And then once they hit the water, of course, the seabirds and large fish will feast on the babies. And actually, the survival hood is really low. So just as babies, the survival hood is only one hatchling survives to adulthood out of 1,000 that hatch. So it's a very, very small survival hood. So about 90% of all the hatchlings that are born get eaten sometime in the first few days of life. But then as they grow older, we're looking at more important threats, okay? And these are the anthropogenic threats. And of course, this will be more serious because they will affect the larger juveniles and the adult population, which is the one that ensures the continuity, the sustainability of a population. In the Indian Ocean, we have huge problems with locals keeping hatchlings as pets, for instance. And that once the turtle is kept for the first weeks or months in captivity, they lose all the instincts to survive in the wild. But once they become large, they become a nuisance. They are released in the water and they don't know what to do in the natural world. Then, of course, in developed areas, we have a lot of problems with boat interaction. So boat strikes are a big issue. We have in the United States, in Florida, for instance, and so on, we have a lot of problems. And pretty much anywhere where there's a lot of activity near the shore, close to feeding areas, we will have issues with boat interactions. Then, of course, we have damaged habitat. We're looking at coastal development having huge impacts on changing the quality of the sand and of the beach. Coastal lighting is a big issue. It will disorientate the nesting females as they reach the beach to try to nest. And they will disorientate the hatchlings on the way to the water. So hatchlings, once they are born, their instinct is to follow the brightest source of light to reach the water. This usually is the reflection of the moon and the stars in the water and the surf hitting the sand. But if you have a bright light at the back, they will be attracted to that. And what we're looking at is problems with finding hatchlings in people's properties, hotels, swimming pools, and so on. And that is a big issue. Plastic ingestion, of course, is becoming a major issue. All the sea turtles at some point in their life will feed on jellyfish, for instance, which underwater are very difficult to distinguish from plastic bags. And then, of course, when they're looking at the omnivorous species that feed on mollusks and crustaceans that are often bright colored, they cannot distinguish that from plastic fragments that are floating in the water and so on. And of course, as you can guess, they cannot digest that. Tortoiseshell trade is also an issue. It is possible that during your travels in the souvenir shops, you've seen items made out of tortoiseshell. Some people don't understand this, but to produce these items such as bracelets, earrings, rings, and so on, the turtle needs to be killed. Okay, so there is active harvesting of hawksbill turtles. That is the species that you can take the tortoiseshell from to produce these items. And this is one of the reasons why the hawksbill turtle is critically endangered and is the most threatened sea turtle species in the world. So if you find these items for sale in the shops and so on, first don't buy them. And then it is possible that you can contact the authorities or local NGOs to explain the situation and see what they can do about that. In most of the countries, it is illegal already to trade hawksbill products. And then in a lot of countries around the world, we still have consumption of turtle meat and eggs as a cultural habit. Again, in most countries, this is already forbidden, but in other countries, especially in small island countries or communities around the world, coastal communities around the world, this is still common. In some places, they won't cause a lot of problems, but we're looking at places like Central America and some places already in India and so on, where the consumption of eggs is having a huge impact on the populations. Then, of course, if you're all divers, you know the problems with climate change and all the terrible impacts it's having on the habitats where the turtles feed. We're looking at impacts on seagrass beds and, of course, on the coral reefs. As scuba divers, we just cringe when we see these bleached reefs and all the destruction that climate change is causing. Of course, sea turtles depend on these habitats, so it is becoming a huge problem. Not only that, but also the warmer temperatures that the beaches are starting to face are causing a bias towards female hatchlings. So the sea turtles have temperature-dependent sex determination. So the warmer the temperature is in the sand, the higher the number of females will be born, okay? With lower temperatures, we have more males. Ideally, we should have a 1-to-1 ratio to have a balanced population, okay? But with the warmer temperatures, we're getting more and more females. Now, most people think that that would be really good because we need more females to reproduce, but males are also important to maintain genetic diversity. And of course, the females will need the males to reproduce. So we actually having a lack of males in a lot of regions around the world. And of course, now we are seeing an increased frequency of storm surges and coastal erosion, which is affecting also nesting habitats. And again, is also creating a lot of destruction on coral reefs systems. Then we move on to fishing. Okay, ghost nets. So actually, I will explain, but the Olive Ridley Project works mainly on ghost nets. And what are ghost nets? So ghost nets are abandoned, lost, discarded fishing nets that we often see floating on the ocean or also washed up on the beaches. Often they will form conglomerates of nets and marine debris. So as discarded fishing gear is floating, they will just get more and more on the way. They will bundle together and they can even create large floating islands of plastic debris and net and so on. Also that, but we're looking at abandoned fishing nets and so on that by becoming entangled on reefs and so on can also cause a lot of destruction on the ocean floor and coral structures. So this is just an example of a ghost net that was retrieved in the Maldives. We often find this kind of nets. We try to retrieve them, and we're doing actually research on their origin. What are these nets made of and what kind of species they affect? These nets don't affect only turtles. We're looking at seabirds, we're looking at marine mammals, smaller species, and so on. And it's a huge problem in the Indian Ocean. Okay, and they actually call the silent killers. So a ghost net can travel because it floats on the surface of the ocean with the currents. It can travel huge distances and it basically entraps and entangles anything that finds in the way. So the impacts are huge, not only on sea turtles, but as I mentioned, on a lot of other animals. So that kind of motivated for the Olive Ridley Project start. So our CEO was volunteering in the Maldives in between 1993 and 1995. It started to understand that there was a lot of problems of entanglements with between turtles and nets. I think it was between 2000. There was like between the last 3 years, there were more than 800 turtles recorded entangled on ghost gear just in the Maldives. So this is a huge, huge problem. So the Olive Ridley Project was established with a vision to protect the sea turtles and their habitats in the Indian Ocean, and with the mission of doing this through rehabilitating affected turtles, conducting research on ghost gear and how it affects the sea turtles and their survival, and also doing a lot of education and awareness on the way. So how do we do this? We partner with a lot of, well, we're mostly based in the Maldives. We partner with some resorts. In the Maldives, we're located in Coco Palm, in Dunyukolu, I cannot pronounce these names. We're located in Baha Atoll, Lamu Atoll. We actually run the first marine turtle rescue center in the Maldives, and that is located in Baha. And we also have turtle biologists in Male, Liani, and Lamu. So part of the work, not only we conduct the work on the ghost gear, we report the entanglements. I will show that we run an international database on sea turtle entanglements, but we also conduct sea turtle ID. So we do population assessments by partnering with local dive centers and resorts. And we're building up a huge database on sea turtle photographs, and we use that as a capture mark recapture method to do population studies. We run expeditions to assess sea turtle abundance and distribution throughout the archipelago. And we also run volunteer placements for both international and local volunteers to learn about sea turtle rehabilitation and sea turtle photo ID. We also have 3 other projects. We have in Pakistan, where we don't do photo ID, but we do a lot of work with local communities on the recovery and reuse of ghost nets. There's a huge problem on that in Pakistan. So we're working with local communities on ways to reuse the ghost nets found in the ocean. So they're doing really cool stuff with dog leashes and donkey harnesses and so on. And we're actually looking at partnerships to produce items such as clothing or other equipment made out of ghost nets. So check our website for some very cool ideas. Then we have the projects in Oman and Kenya, which are mostly related to sea turtle ID. In Oman, we're trying to do an in-water assessment of foraging sites near Ziggy Bay. And in Kenya, we're partnering with some local organizations to establish a marine protected area on the south coast of Kenya, so south of Mombasa, in front of Diani Beach. So it's just a small video. This is a video that we made in one of the expeditions in the Maldives. So this was an Olive Ridley turtle project we found entangled in a massive ghost net. If you can see on the video, probably not so well, but the turtle has been entangled by the back flipper, and the back flipper is already rotting. So this turtle probably would not have drowned from being entangled on this net, but being stuck there, it cannot look for food. So it will probably starve to death. And then at some point, this flipper would either get cut off, or there's a possibility that this turtle would develop infections from skin infections, pneumonia, and so on, from its deteriorated state. So what we do, we collect these animals and take them to the rescue center where they are assessed, their health is checked, we do x-rays, we conduct amputations if needed, and we administer antibiotics and so on. And if the turtle is fit to be released, off she goes, and we're very happy about that. Some of them require more time, and some of them, sometimes if they're lucky, they can be released straight away upon disentanglement. That is the ideal, but not all the time we can ensure that. In some cases, we also record dead stranding turtles associated with nets. Unfortunately, we cannot do anything about these. But what we do is we collect information on what we observe. For instance, here we have a Coco. It was an Olive Ridley turtle that was caught in some nets. We managed to rescue it, but this turtle had already been amputated. Here on the right, you will see one of the bones from this turtle. So God knows how long this turtle had been caught in that net for that bone to be fully disattached to the body, no scales, no nothing attached to that. So these turtles can actually stay for ages on these nets. This turtle was then rehabilitated by our vets. So what we're looking at, we look, for instance, as the size of the mesh, the size of the net, the type of material that the net is made of, what kind of animals and devices are associated to that net, and so on. And then we created a database for entanglement and ghost net data input, where everybody can contribute data for. So here, this is based online. It was done in collaboration with Global Blue and IUCN. And basically anybody can report a ghost net and become a citizen scientist in helping us to perform these researches on the origin and the trajectories of the ghost nets and their real impact on the populations, not only of turtles, but other animals. So it's free access. Anybody can join and can report the ghost net with pictures and data and so on. This is another video, another Olive Ridley. So the reason why we called Olive Ridley is because the majority of the turtles that get tangled here in the Indian Ocean are Olive Ridleys. I mentioned that they're oceanic. They feed mostly at the surface of the water in oceanic waters. So they're the ones that get more interacting with ghost gear.
And it's quite well healed, so we're going to try and actually release her as she is.
Okay, and here you see how we work. So we find the turtles, we do the assessment, and then depending on the cases, we release them or not. If you do happen to go to the Maldives, do stop by and pay us a visit and learn more for sure. Then also, of course, sea turtle ID is a big part of our project. So at the moment, for the Maldives, in our database, we have over 5,000 individual turtles already. And this is just done by photo ID. How does that work? We take photos of the left and the right profiles of their faces, okay? And that works as a fingerprint for the turtles. So all the turtles are different between each other. There's not two turtles that look exactly the same. We try to take both left and right profiles because they don't necessarily match. So the left could be very different from the right. And from this, we, instead of applying tags, which can be really invasive techniques, and so on. Anybody can participate in Sea Turtle ID, and anybody can contribute with data. So in this case, if you have a camera or a GoPro or whatever, and if you find a turtle, you can take photos of those turtles and submit to the international database and contribute through citizen science research. In our case, we submit our photos to the Internet of Turtles, which is the international database. Anybody can access, anybody can contribute. If you happen to go diving in the Maldives a lot, submit a photo. You might be surprised that turtle might have been spotted by a researcher before, whether it was previous years ago or just the day before. So hopefully with time, we actually see movements around the ocean basins between feeding areas and nesting areas and so on. And we get really cool information about the whereabouts of all the turtles. This is how we work. Before, quite recently actually, we did all the photo ID by eye. So we have the database. So let's just say the turtle in the center is the one we have in our database. And then say that day we've been diving in Baja Atoll and we found 6 different hawksbills and we want to match it. So what we're looking at, we will be looking at the arrangement of the scales behind the eyes first, see if they match. If you look at the pictures, you will see that turtle number 1 is definitely not the same because you see that middle scale behind the eye is very different. But then you might look at the other ones and like, ooh, we are in trouble, all right? Because they all look exactly the same. But then you look like turtle number 3 is missing the scales here near the chin. Then the other species you could be, okay, they look exactly the same. But then we focus on one single scale that is very different from all the others. In this case, the long scale behind near the ear canal. And that is long and it's kind of like sausage shaped in a way. And then you can see that actually the turtle that matches is turtle number 2. So this is how we work. Nowadays, we have algorithms. We submit the photos to the international database directly, and the computer does all the dirty work for us, which is really good. If you are interested in contributing, and actually anytime you are in contact with turtles, we encourage always a responsible behavior. For instance, a lot of people, oh my God, you need to get really close to the turtles to take photos of them, but actually we don't. We usually stay 3 meters or more behind the turtles, and we don't force the encounters. The best way for you to interact with the turtle is to let the turtle lead the encounter. If the turtle is willing to interact with you, she will come to you and then enjoy the moment. If the turtle is a shy turtle and needs some space, you should respect that. So we don't chase after turtles. We don't touch the turtles. And of course, we don't ride the turtles, okay? That's a no-go for any kind of interaction with sea turtles. So again, if you're also scuba diving, of course, be aware if you're trying to take a photo of a turtle, be aware of your surroundings. Be careful with those flippers. Don't try to destroy the habitat where the sea turtles live, of course. As a rule of thumb, give them enough space, keep quiet, be relaxed, and let the turtle dictate the rules of interaction, okay? If you do happen to have a camera, if you want to contribute with photos, well, approach from the side, not from the front or from the behind. Otherwise, you will scare the turtle and she will be suspicious of your presence. And in some cases, it will swim away. Try to remain minimum 1 meter, ideally 3 meters away. Of course, do not chase or just chase the turtle or touch it. Give it space. And then when you're taking a picture, avoid flash. And if you can get both sides of the face and one from above, rock on. You are a scientist. Congratulations. We would love to see your photos. So what can you do at home? For right now, we are like, most of us are stuck somewhere at home in boring places, and we all craving for some underwater time, I guess, at least for me. So some advices that we can give, if you're not doing yet, reduce your consumption. When we're looking at reducing the consumption, it's not about, I don't know, try not to get fat on pizza, of course. Try to be a responsible consumer. We're looking at try to ask questions. Where is your food coming from? If you like seafood, is it certified? Is it a sustainable fishery? Is it endangered species or not? What is the status? So be careful. Don't be afraid of asking questions, exploring on the internet, investigating, so that you can have a guilt-free consumption. And this is also to do with plastic and unnecessary items. Okay, so at the moment where the tap on plastic is on, it's just coming out. It's not about recycling anymore. It's about reducing. If you can reduce plastic, see easy ways how to do that. There's plenty of hints and suggestions online and with friends. Follow that, and you'll see that your life becomes much, much easier. And then, of course, you can spread the message about conservation. Of course, Olive Ridley Project, we are very active on social media. Follow us for updates and hints and ideas of how to become more turtle friendly, for instance. Spread the message, see what you can help locally, and so on. And then, of course, reconnect to nature. Protect what you love. If you're passionate about sea turtles, tell people about them. Tell people about coral reefs. Spread the love, and you'll be surprised of how many people just think a coral reef is pretty, but don't understand how important it is to keep the balance and to conserve the habitat in a pristine way. If you want to help Olive Ridley Project specifically, well, first visit our website, learn about what we're doing. Follow us on social media, of course. We have all the open channels like Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, you name it, of course. You can always donate. There's different ways to donate. If you're not in a position to do so, you can adopt a turtle and get notifications on your adopted turtle. That could be a turtle on the reef that we identify. At the moment, we have turtles from Kenya and the Maldives for adoption. And that happens whenever that turtle is sighted by somebody of our team. You get a notification about that turtle. And also you can adopt one of our turtle patients from the rehab center. We also run volunteer programs and expeditions. If you're keen into diving but want to do something different, you can join one of our expeditions once this pandemic allows that. Or if you're interested in learning more about sea turtle rehabilitation, or if you're into veterinary science, you can volunteer at our rescue center. And then, of course, you can fundraise for us as well. Sure. I was just mentioning in the previous presentation, we have a 12-year-old kid that through his school colleagues, he managed to raise 750 euros or dollars for us last week. And wow, it's amazing how people with a little bit of will can do amazing things, and that can go so far for us. So think about it. So I will now leave you and answer any questions. And thank you so much for your time, for those that stick to listen to the end of the presentation. And sure, I'll go and read some questions, see if there's some, and then just pop any questions that you want. So let's see. Okay, so let's see what's happening here. All right, so Luca, okay. Okay, so we're collaborating with projects in Tanzania, specifically on Zanzibar, for instance, and this is for Luca. I was living in Mozambique, lucky you. I was there this year and I absolutely loved it. So you published underwater photos. If you happen to have photos, you can submit them anytime. That was one of the questions that was in the previous session. It doesn't need to be like Instagram where you share immediate photos. You can have photos from 10 years before, 5 years before, from anywhere in the world. You can upload them on the Internet of Turtles. They will be welcome, and it would be very interesting to get a time series from previous years or from a decade ago or 5 years ago, where you can potentially see resightings of that turtle later on. So, so do publish your photos or send us if you want us to do the dirty job for you, no problem. All the photos are credited to the author. So bring them on or update them yourselves and you'll be doing a favor for sea turtle research and conservation. Next question was that if the green turtle we see in the ocean are also the same as a careta careta. No, so they are two different species, okay? So both species coexist in the Indian Ocean, pretty much any of the oceans, but they are different species, okay? They occupy different niche, they feed on different things, they look differently. In the video, you will see that the green turtle was the first one that I presented with that beautiful streamlined shell and the small face that feeds on seagrass. And the loggerhead is that one with the big, big head and the bulky shell that feeds on crustacean and mollusks and so on. But actually, careta careta, it is the most common species in the Mediterranean, and it nests in Greece and a lot of the Mediterranean countries. And in Italy, of course, is the most common species we find in the rescue centers there. So I know a lot of people that work in Italy with loggerhead turtles. So you also find green turtles, but they're different species. And no, sorry for asking questions. Pauline, if you expected a presentation in Spanish, I went with the majority and I apologize for that, but I'm happy to answer any questions you might have in Spanish. You can ask them in Spanish and I'll answer, no problems. Well, thank you, Luca. Oh, Buccaneer, perfect. Yeah, we know them. we dive in the crab in Diani. So, perfect. Okay, thanks, Pauline. Any questions that you may have? Feel free to join in the video as well if you want a one-on-one chat. You might have questions that are interesting for the people. So we have 4 more minutes left on the session. So okay, Sarah is asking if we have another presentation again. So actually we have, hi, hello, Pauline.
Hi.
So let me just answer that. So we have another presentation at 12 by my colleague Joe Goodfellow tomorrow. And then also our lead veterinarian surgeon will be giving a presentation on sea turtle rehab at 11 tomorrow. Okay, there's more opportunity, Sarah, so don't feel guilty about that. No problem. So tomorrow at 12 and at 11, you can join us. Thank you. Pauline.
I have a question for you.
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
No, I have 2 computers. I just switched it off. Yes. You can ask me.
I am in the Bahamas and I'm running a little resort. And sometime we found some dead turtle on the beach. So how often do you find turtle on the beach?
On the beach, I don't know exactly. For instance, I don't work in the Maldives. I don't know. That would be a good question for my colleagues working there. But I don't think it's very common.
Okay.
Okay.
Because we are on the Atlantic side, so I guess it's probably because of plastic, unfortunately, by eating plastic? Or have you heard about any disease, or it might be high chance that it's plastic?
Yeah, there's so many reasons why turtles can wash up dead on the beach. Okay, in the Bahamas, it could be plastic injection, it could be disease. I suspect in the Bahamas it will be mostly green turtles that are found entangled.
I found twice this year, and it was 2 green turtles.
Yeah, initially when we find dead turtles on the beach, we will do a physical assessment to take out any obvious reasons like boat strike or slaughtering or so on. Then what we have to do is to retrieve the turtle and take it to a lab to conduct a necropsy. Only when we do a necropsy, which is basically we open up the turtle, we do an autopsy of the turtle. And then usually we will find signs of disease, like parasites or tumors. And then of course, we look at the stomach contents. And in that case, it is very common to find plastic. Unfortunately, especially for juvenile turtles, it's becoming more of a problem, the plastic ingestion. For juvenile turtles as well, we also have a disease that is very debilitating, which is a fibropapilloma disease, which you will see on juvenile turtles. You will see like tumors growing around the eyes and the mouth. And that is a very serious disease that, because it's so debilitating, it will affect the turtle's ability to see and to eat and so on. Also, another problem that is often what happens, for instance, when we find a dead turtle on the beach, a lot of the time the causes is drowning. Okay, so we look at a turtle and you don't think that the turtle has drowned. So,
but how you find out it drowned? And just washed on the beach, you think?
Yeah, because what happens, okay, so when the turtle, so I don't know if you watched the beginning of the presentation.
No, I missed it.
Okay, so the sea turtles have lungs like us, so they need to come to the surface to breathe.
Yeah.
Okay, so if they get caught on a net, especially bottom trawling, or if they get entangled, or so on, and if they cannot come to the surface to breathe, they drown. Okay. Okay, and what happens is that if the turtle is fresh, usually don't see signs of drowning. It's not something obvious. Sometimes you would need to do some examines to,
like, open it, as you said earlier.
Yeah, there's some tests you can do to the lungs to see if the turtle died of drowning or not. So actually only with a specialist exam, you can find out the true causes of death. But in that case, in the Bahamas and pretty much anywhere, there's usually a hotline or local conservation group that will record these events and will retrieve the turtles and conduct these necropsies. So I don't know exactly in the Bahamas who that is, but there's always somebody.
That island, but yeah, I know someone on another island who's doing it. But I was just wondering if it's happened around other places in the world. And
yeah.
And do you notice any? Because same, we have a dead seagull that happened 2 months ago, and I was wondering if a turtle can have a parasite from a seagull, or on the other way or not, because it was approximately the same time.
It's probably unrelated. It is probably unrelated. To find a relationship between the two events would be a little bit probably too much. It could be, but I don't know. That's
okay. No, I just asking in case of.
No, but for instance, I will give you an example. As I work in Kenya, I mean, we have a huge amount of turtles being washed up dead on our beach. And at the moment, with the Turtle ID program, we have over 450 individual green turtles identified for 5 kilometers of reef, just from photo ID. And we get, And last year we had about 50 dead turtles washed up on that stretch of beach, and none of them were on our database. Okay.
Wow. And they travel far, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. So these turtles could be entangled far away. They could be coming with the currents. It might not be even a local turtle from the local foraging population. And then we can't relate it to a single event. Sometimes we have a big storm surge where we have like strong waves and something that typically brings dead animals. Also with the monsoon in the Indian Ocean and everything. But it is common to happen, unfortunately. Yeah. And it's actually very important to document those things, because then we know what kind of threats are affecting the turtles. So typical things we do, we will measure them. We can take samples from the animal for diet analysis and for genetics, for instance. And we could actually, from genetics, we can pinpoint the original population for that turtle, which is really cool. So all these things that we can and we do as a sea turtle conservation group and research group. So
cool. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Any more questions? Anybody else wants to join or make any comments? And Pauline, where are you from?
I'm French, but I live in the Bahamas. I'm running a little resort in the Bahamas.
Nice.
Yeah, which is pretty hard at the moment with the situation.
Yeah.
Everybody.
We're also trying.
Yeah, exactly.
Everybody's struggling, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
So at the moment, we have the research expeditions are on hold. We are trying to restart the volunteer program in the Maldives, but mostly with local volunteers, of course. And in Kenya, we're trying to regroup our team. So we lost, our funding got suspended for obvious reasons. And at the moment, we're just relying literally on photo submissions from citizens in Diani Beach.
Yeah.
But the idea is to with fundraising at the moment, so we can rehire our local staff so they can run the project in Kenya directly, and I can supervise the team.
That's nice.
From the distance.
How many locals do you have in the team?
Well, at the moment, nobody. But I worked in Kenya. I worked with a Kenyan marine biologist. She was really good. She started as an intern, and then I trained her, and now I was training her to become a project manager. And in Kenya, we are working with students from universities mostly. So they will come and conduct their research projects. We will tell them more or less what we need to find out, and they will develop their projects. And then we do a lot of educational programs through local partners with local schools and so on. But because our project in Kenya is very recent, we only started 2 years ago. We were focusing mainly on establishing the baselines for the population. So doing the photo ID to see how many turtles we had, how were they distributed, where were the hotspots for turtles along the reef. Now that we have all that information, now we can focus on specific projects. But in the Maldives, we have mostly volunteers at the rescue center, and especially veterinarian students or high school students and so on that want to learn about sea turtle rehabilitation.
In your presentation, you were saying like sometime in the culture they are eating turtle. How do you explain to them that I don't know if it's illegal in Kenya or it's still
No. In terms of being a legal fishery, there's only a few places in the world where it's actually legal. In Kenya, it's not. In the Bahamas, for sure, it's not. But for instance, when you go to Cayman Islands, it is. Okay. And then if you go to Nicaragua, it's legal. And they're killing thousands of green turtles every year. We're looking at about 7,000 turtles a year just for human consumption in Nicaragua. But then you look at the neighboring countries and it's all illegal. So in some places, for instance, in Australia, I believe, and Papua New Guinea, all these very traditional communities or ethnies, some of them do have special permits to consume sea turtles and their meat. But overall, the populations are so decimated that we really need to work on that. But it's not an easy task, of course. But I can give you an example. So before I joined Kenya, I worked in West Africa, in a small island nation where there was no protection law for the turtles. So the consumption was common. You would go to the market and you would see sea turtle meat everywhere from every single species, loggerheads, Olive Ridley, even leatherback turtle meat. And part of the research that we were doing in the conservation was not only to gather enough data to justify the protection of the turtles, but to actually work with the communities to get them ready for the transition between the legal consumption and trade to accept that at some point it would be illegal. So it was more than a 3-year process between, okay, guys, next year it will be illegal. So let's explain why this will be illegal. We actually involved the community in all aspects of the research. We did social research, biological research. We incorporated some of the key sea turtle hunters and traders in our conservation efforts. So, for instance, the ladies that were selling sea turtle meat in the market, we had several meetings with them. Okay, how can we as a conservation group bring some alternatives that make sense for you to originate income that are not dependent on the sea turtles? For the turtle fishermen, we hired them as research assistants. So now they're running in-water projects, for instance. And in the first year of the new law, we negotiated between the communities and the authorities that there would be no punishment for sea turtle consumption and harvesting. So there will be a lax enforcement. So instead of people getting arrested or paying fines, they would just be told why it was protected, the reasons, and just try to make them understand the need of protecting turtles. So it was a nice, smooth transition. We still have problems, of course, but...
Yes, that's what I wanted to ask. If they understand, if they get it, that they can make more money about a live turtle. It's like the same problem we have with sharks. You know, you make more money with a live shark or a live turtle than a dead animal. But it's pretty hard to explain in a small island when it's part of their culture, and they were doing this for ages, to tell them, look, you have to stop what you're doing. And they are going to look at you and say, wait, who are you? It's not your country. You're not at home. You know what I mean? So you just don't want to do it like in the bad way. I mean, you just want them to understand and not be mean, and try to let them know if you're doing that, you can gain something else, but in a different way, rather than eat them. Because we still see it here. You say it's illegal.
Illegal.
No, it's illegal here in the Bahamas.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, I thought you said it's still illegal. But we still saw it. And sometimes when we come back from diving, we see turtle shell. I say, oh my God. And it just drives me nuts because they don't understand. They don't get it. And that's why I try to get some different ideas from different parts of the world to explain to them. And they tell you, yeah, but the meat is so good. I say, yeah, but you can eat something else. Eat chicken. Apparently, it tastes the same.
But I think most of the people that start conservation, I have a few years now of experience, some good experiences and bad experiences. And I think the worst thing is to actually enforce a law or something like a hard way. This takes a lot of education. When you're looking at the older generations, forget about them. It will take forever to change them. So
yeah, exactly. The best is
it
to
takes
go
a long
to the
time.
school, to the kids, and then the best
It takes a
speaker
long
of the
time to get
kids.
these kids to.
Sorry?
Sometimes it is the kids that end up convincing the parents and the grandparents to change. Personally, I think that one of the strategies that worked better in my experience was actually to identify key members of the communities that, you know, they have a voice, they are well respected by the community, and work with them on, so the leaders, you know, because you as a foreigner, they will tell you, I've been through that so many times, go back to your country, you white girl. I work in Africa a lot. You know, you come this white girl and like full of great ideas and let's save the turtles. No, they hate that. You cannot just come like, oh, I'm here to save the turtles, so stop eating them. No, that doesn't work. You have to respect them. I mean, these are people that, first, they've been doing this for a long, long time. They often don't know any of the alternatives. This is easy for them. You try to tell a meat eater to turn vegetarian from night to day, you know. Even for me, I've been vegetarian for 20 years, but I took at least 1 year of, okay, I can do this, you know. But it is a struggle. And I think also on the other side, people that are working in conservation should not despair. These are processes that are not immediate. You need to gain their trust and their respect. Personally, I really love involving people in all aspects of conservation. For instance, I research sea turtles on the feeding areas. How can you, there's no other better way to learn about the turtles, but to involve the people that are harvesting the turtles on these feeding areas, to get their input, where the turtle's feeding and so on. And as they see you working and you keep explaining why you're doing this and you give examples from other places, slowly the chip will fall in. And if you're lucky to get the right people excited about what you're trying to say, because most people are acting on ignorance, but you cannot blame them. And surely you can always do more to educate and to create awareness. And of course, these are people that are not going to look at Facebooks and Instagrams. You need to be there face to face, involve them, talk to them, get the trust, involve locals in your projects as much as possible, and use the traditional knowledge and their input on how to, if they say, okay, maybe we can do this, but, you know, as a community, I think we can work it out, but we need at least 5 years. You need to prepare yourself to be patient to wait those 5 years, because they're asking you, they are telling you their laws, like how they're going to change. You ask them, okay, we need you to change. What do you need from us, okay, to let you change, okay? Is it education? Is it resources? Is it help finding alternatives? Because a lot of them do fall in finding alternatives for these things. But that could be into helping them finding microcredits or helping them develop small projects. With these ladies, they said, the ladies that were selling turtle meat in the market, they said, well, if you teach us how to make clothes or something, maybe we can do small items, sell in the hotels. Okay, let's try it, see how it goes. We bring somebody to teach them how to sew, and okay, this works for us. Some of them, it didn't work. They said, no, I'm terrible at sewing and making clothes and things like that. Okay, what do you need? Then instead of selling turtle meat, I want to sell some other products. Can I have microcredits to buy, to stock a small shop, and then I'll repay that in a year or two.
Yeah.
Why not? You know, you have to listen to what they need and what they request. And then from there.
No, if they know where to harvest, they know where the turtle are. So
exactly.
So
for instance, in this place, we first, I actually hired this turtle fisherman for my PhD project, and they didn't like me at all at the beginning. And then I said, look, what if you start catching turtles for research, you know? And they're like, we're not so sure about that. I'm like, okay, how much money you make for catching turtles and selling them in the market? What would be a fair price to pay you for a salary or for a contribution towards your efforts? With the only condition that you don't catch turtles anymore for sale, just for research. And how could we fund this? So with them, we located the feeding areas, the areas where would be more likely to see the turtles. And now they are the ones taking the tourists to snorkel with the turtles, to see them in their natural habitat. And they're making their own income, you know? Yeah. So what you're doing is really good. So you're reaching out for people for ideas. And this is what you have to be, is open to people's ideas from the outside, but especially open to the ideas that people in your area can recommend and would work for them. But be patient. Don't despair. Be patient.
Yeah, I know.
And you will never be successful. You will never be 100% successful. You can, I mean, I'm not even joking. I mean, we were losing in a 7-kilometer beach, we were losing about 200 Olive Ridley turtles a year for, they were hunted, 200 turtles a year on a 7-kilometer beach, okay? This was crazy. In 3 years, we reduced it to 50. You know what? It's a victory. We still lose 50 a year, but to reduce so much, all that, is little steps. You cannot expect, you know, wow, miracles. It will take time. But if you can already reduce by that much, like Costa Rica, we reduced by 100% poaching rate of the nests. You reduced to 20%. Okay, you lost 20%. Be grateful for the 80 that you managed to protect, you know?
But you have the police or no, not the police.
Yeah.
Somebody who check, because here we barely have any. Really,
if you have, I don't know. So do you have nesting sites?
But that's what I try to find out, because I will be, I think, on our beach, but that's the thing. That's why I want to learn a bit more how to find out the nest site, because probably we have it. We are on the resort. It's a small resort, so it's nothing to see with the bigger hotel that scare or get the turtle away from nesting. We are on 12 kilometers of beach, so I'm pretty sure they can't.
No, you just see what is the most likely species that could be nesting the Bahamas. I'm sure there are reports. Whitecast is doing a lot of. Try to see Whitecast reports. I'm sure you heard about them. They work in the Caribbean region. Try to read their reports. What kind of species are nesting in that region? What are the expected seasonality? For instance, if it's green turtles, maybe they nest from, I don't know, June to October. If they are leatherbacks, probably not. But, or hawksbills, they will be nesting from April to November, for instance, things like that. And then there's actually, there are several reports published where you can set up monitoring protocols to estimate nesting densities. I can send you a document that I prepared recently for Djibouti, where I just had like a very short list. I can put it here on the me see. So for instance, SWAT, I don't know if you heard of SWAT, is the State of the World Sea Turtles. They have a really cool magazine, actually. And they published the minimum standards for data collection on nesting beaches. So that will tell you, like, for instance, what you can do. You can do something small, like one patrol, or you can walk the beach once a week and record evidence of sea turtle nesting, for instance. If you know the season already, say the neighboring islands already have monitoring protocols established, see what they're doing, and then in that manual you will see how many days you need to monitor to get an estimate, for instance.
I am on the website right now, but that's why I don't know enough, and I really want to learn a bit more.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially here on the island. So, but I'm
putting something here
nice.
on the chat. I don't know if they'll allow me because a lot of text, but.
Wow, that's a nice website. We have all the datas and.
Okay, so hopefully that will work. Okay, so here you have. Oh, never mind, it's too complicated. No. It's just I was saying something, but of course you need your beaches will be suitable for nesting. So I just put it there. That's the manual for the minimum data standard recommendation for nesting beaches. So I recommend that you look at the Whitecast reports, find out what is expected for the Bahamas. There might be also other groups on other islands in the Bahamas where you can reach out and.
Yeah,
okay.
I know.
So at least from there you will know when is the nesting season for which species. And then if you go to this manual, it will explain how you can organize. I mean, if you have a staff, I mean, it doesn't take too much. For instance, one of the examples is that if you know when the peak of the nesting season is known to occur, so say it is expected that the majority of the nesting will happen on in the month of June. Okay, you can, for 2 weeks, you can send somebody to walk every day that beach and records nests on a daily basis, for instance. So you don't need to be patrolling every day. If you just want to do an assessment, you don't need to start straight away a turtle project with volunteers and things like that. First, you know if you have nesting, and then depending on what you find, then you can establish a small protocol. I'll leave here my email address if you need some advice or just reach out anytime you need. I'll be happy to help and put you in contact as well with some people on the Olive Ridley Project.
Yeah.
So I will have to leave you now, but feel free to ask me any questions. So it's dinner time here. I'm late for dinner. But no, absolutely. Thank you so much for watching. It was a little bit long, I'm sorry, but I'm glad you came. And do write me an email, it's there on the chat, and ask me any questions, and then we could always arrange to have a one-on-one conversation again. I don't have experience in the Bahamas, but I worked for many years in Central America, in Costa Rica and Panama. So I know more or less those populations, and I'm an Atlantic person. I just moved to East Africa in the last 2 years, but I'm an Atlantic baby. Let's just say that. So most of the contacts I have, and most of the experience that I have is in the Atlantic Ocean. So maybe I can help you better than I could help anybody in the Indian Ocean. Okay, well, thank you so much, Pauline, for your attention. And do reach out. Don't be shy. Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
Buen provecho.